Yeah, take it away.
Okay. My name is Mike, and I am a heroin addict. I want to say it's always an honor and a privilege to be asked to speak at a HA meeting. And I'll try not to get into a long war story. And when people usually say that, they usually get into a long war story. So I always follow it up with that. I'll try to run through my how it was as quick as possible. The first time I picked up a substance, I'll tell you, before I was using substances, I used anything to get outside myself. I grew up in a kind of like a loud, violent neighborhood, and my upbringing was a stepfather between like 2 and 8 who was pretty violent. He was a heroin addict and an alcoholic. And he used to also abuse my mom physically. So I grew up around that. And so I always tried to find ways to escape. When I was probably like 11 and 12, I escaped with graffiti. Before that, I used to like doing magic, and I was into like martial arts and gymnastics and sports, music, anything that I could really obsess with to get myself out of what was going on. But when I was 13, I remember, I probably drank before, but I remember buying a quart of beer and drinking it, and the noise quieted down in my head. And it just made me feel at peace with what was going on. And I started being accepted more by people around me. I started hanging out. It also gave me the courage to do whatever I wanted to do. And I started smoking weed like right away. And I'm going to fast forward because when I was 17 years old, I was drinking, and I went to meet somebody, and they introduced me to heroin. And of course, when I went to this social club, and back then in my neighborhood, they sold heroin out of social clubs. So I just went into the social club to meet this girl that I was meeting, and the bartender wasn't really a bar, it was like a small little bar. I guess it was a bar. It was just the guy that was running the social club. He threw a bag of dope on top of the bar, and I looked at him, and he said, "You ever done this?" And I said, "Yes, of course," which I never did, And he handed me a rolled up bill, and I opened it up, and I just sniffed it all. And if I can remember, I went straight to the bathroom, And I tell you, I remember that there was also a poster of Elvis, a glow-in-the-dark velvet poster of Elvis in the bathroom too. And I felt like he was looking at me like in disgust, But I was throwing up, and I left. I got out of the bathroom, and there was more people there, and I just kind of like worked my way out of there. And I ended up going towards where I was, which was hanging out with my friends who drink and smoke weed. And I remember throwing up under a bridge. And then I went and I hung out with my friends, and I didn't tell anybody, that I used. Eventually, I found someone else that used heroin, and I started using with him, and we would sniff heroin and throw up. And that's what we did, for like the first couple of times I used heroin. That's all I did was really like throw up and be stoned. And then eventually I stopped throwing up. But I felt like it really just made me feel better. It took away my anxiety, took away my depression. It took away my fear. And I believe that it really kept me alive for quite a few years. And then I was in this delusional world. I grew up like around there was a lot of heroin in my neighborhood. And I thought I was going to be this drug dealer. And I started dealing heroin. And I thought I was going to be like this millionaire. I always had this thought that I was going to be like this millionaire drug dealer. And, we all thought that, I guess, the people I was hanging out with. And eventually I just became my best customer, and I was screwing up the connections money. And eventually I couldn't even be trusted, and I was doing anything for money at this point. I wasn't selling heroin anymore. I ended up getting arrested a couple of times. I got like 2 felonies on my record for selling drugs to support my habit. And I'm going to fast forward because my story is basically jails, institutions, being homeless, destroying relationships is basically what happened after that, because I was delusional. I thought I was going to be this drug dealer. And I had some fun, until it got really bad. But that's not why I got clean. I didn't get clean because I was having fun, I'm 56 years old now. This is when I was 17 to about 20, 21. By the time I was 21, 22 years old, I was finding out what it was to be dope sick, to get arrested, kicking in cells. They didn't have 24-hour courts back then. It took you like 3 days to see a judge, so you would just kick cold turkey, before you even got to see the judge. And I can't even tell you how many times I've done that with like a bundle or 2 habit a day. And we're talking New York City bags, so it's a little different. I don't know how it is now because I've been clean. Actually, I just had 8 years, the 25th of last month, and so I didn't really use too much upstate. But I'm going to fast forward again. So I'm going to fast forward. First time I tried getting clean. Because like I said, it's jails and institutions, and I've been like in a lot of detoxes, and I've basically isolated myself. I would go months without talking to anyone. The only person I would talk to was the person I was making money off of, who I was scamming or dealing or going to cop. That's it. I had like no social life, no social like interaction with anyone. And I was in a very isolated world. And of course, everything that the heroin was doing for me, it stopped. Before I felt like it was helping me, it was calming me down, it was helping me with my depression and my anxiety. After a while, it stopped working, and it just made things worse. Now, if I do a bag of heroin, I go into instant depression. I already know that because I've relapsed before. So I'm going to fast forward. I ended up coming up to Albany through friends, and I ended up staying clean for a while. I went to a lot of AA meetings and NA meetings in the beginning. There was not HA up here. And I stayed clean for a while. I didn't work the steps. I didn't change too much. I did in the beginning, I guess, for like the first couple of years, I did pretty good. I didn't really have a sponsor who really took me through the steps, but I did call him a lot and talk to him, but it really wasn't like sponsorship that I know today. So eventually I ended up wanting to get high because all the noise got loud again. And the only thing I know how to do to fix that is by using. And of course, all I thought about was using drugs. And I ended up picking up, and it took about 2 weeks for me to end up like in a psych ward. I remember talking to them in the psych ward because I wanted to get out. And they put me in a room with like a bunch of people. It was like the doctor, the psychiatrist, and a bunch of people. And I was sitting there at this table like this. They was asking me how I was. And I said, yeah, I'm doing okay. I was telling them, listen, I'm not crazy. I mean, I just picked up with 10 and a half years clean. And the room got really quiet. And the psychiatrist looked at me and said, that's crazy. You know? And I think it was one of the most insane things I ever did in my life was pick up. And I've done a lot of crazy shit. I put myself through a lot of unnecessary stuff. But I guess it might have been necessary because it got me sitting here right now. But I'm going to fast forward because I stayed out there for about a year and a half. And I honestly thought at this point, if I would just do heroin and do no other drugs, I would be okay. This is where my sick thinking went. You know, as long as I can maintain my heroin, I'll be fine. You know, which is insane because I was depressed and I was suicidal. And I was going to meetings and I ended up in New Jersey because my family had like property over there and they let me manage it and live there. And that's the only reason why I even had a place to live. And I was copping and I was going to meetings and I was insane. I had a guy living with me who was in the program. He was coming up on a year clean. I had another guy that was going to college to be a pastor. So I had one guy preaching the word of God and one guy with almost a year clean. And you know how it is when you almost have a year clean, you know everything about recovery. So he was just telling me everything I had to do. It was fun. You know, it was terrible. So anyway, I remember my last day, you know, and it was people in the program that reached out to me. They had my phone number, and they called me while I was, they ran into me in a car while I had just copped and I was going home and I was sick and I just wanted to get straight. And I was doing enough heroin where I was just straight. Like I wasn't even getting high at this point, which sucks. It's like the worst place to be, I think, you know, because I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. I couldn't get clean and I couldn't use drugs anymore, you know, and I felt like I was lost and I wanted to kill myself is the bottom line. So these guys run into me. They tell me, hey, Mike, you want to go to a meeting later? I said, yeah, maybe. So I keep walking. Then they call me and they tell me, do you want to go to a meeting later? And I said, sure, man, I'll give you guys a call later. So I go home. I do the 2 bags. You know, I get straight. I stand up. I'm freaking miserable. I want to kill myself. And I got back down on my knees and I said a prayer. And I can't even tell you how many foxhole prayers I have. I have like so many. God, please help me stop. You know, I promise if you help me stop, I'll do this, I'll do that. You know, just like so many. And I eventually got up and I called on the phone. And I called these people. And I got into a detox without insurance. I don't even know how. I didn't even have insurance. And they knew of a place in Staten Island that would take me in if I just told them I was homeless, you know. So that's what I did. And I came out and I got a coffee commitment right away. And I think it was one of the most important things I did was get a commitment in the program. I got a sponsor right away. And I just went to meetings. And then I went and I started working and I got a job. And I stayed down and and I got clean on a block that sells, you can cop heroin right there. And it's plenty of bars and restaurants and there's always something you could get into. And I was able to stay clean right there. And that's because I went to meetings. Eventually I moved back to Albany. And I did the same thing. I got a coffee commitment, and I got a sponsor who took me through the big book, through the steps of the program. And I think that's what I did differently. I did a 4th step, 5th. I did a couple of workshops too, but I did a thorough one with my sponsor. And I remember the second workshop I went to, like I was with my sponsor, and I said, listen, I don't really have that much on my list right now. And he says, yeah, because you've done a couple, which is good. Like, I'm getting a little better, So I just recently started doing the same thing. So I just got a service commitment for I got a service commitment for a month, and then I got another service commitment. And I just got a new sponsor because I just moved up in this area, and me and my sponsor just haven't been connecting that much, and I just felt like I needed to get someone else. So I just got a new sponsor that lives in Clifton Park. And God, my life is like so great. I wanted to start off by saying what I did today, because my life is like so different, like the freedom I got from not using is freaking amazing. It really is. Like, I was the type of guy that could not stop. I could not go like a certain amount of hours without doing a bag of dope, Today I woke up, I made coffee and cereal, right? Took a shower, and then I went to work. I work on Sunday. Today's my Monday. I worked, and then I left, and I went to the supermarket and bought some food, and then went home, and my girlfriend cooked food and stuff like that, and I ate, and then I drove over here in a car. I went to work in a car too, but just me having a car and driving is crazy. It really is. If you would have known me before, I was supposed to be dead at 21, and I just had a birthday party. My family had a little birthday party for me, and I'm sitting there and I'm saying, we did the cake and everything, and then I says, yeah, you know what? I was supposed to be dead at 21, and here I am. And my brother yells out, "You fooled them!" It was kind of funny, but he knew what I was talking about, And it's sad because I almost I probably really shouldn't be here, And I don't even know how I'm here and how I drove to this meeting. I was thinking about it, I was listening to music driving over here. It's crazy, really, when you really come to think about it. So my life has changed so much. The program has helped me so much. I've done stuff I used to talk about. I went to school. I've involved in different projects that I always talking about, that I used to talk about before. I'm a pretty busy person. I really am. I got a couple of things that I'm involved in outside of work, including the program and, in a relationship, and just the whole thing, man. It's freaking amazing, And I wake up, and the first thing, I do not think about a bag of dope, I used to go to sleep thinking about a bag of dope if I didn't have any, And then I would wake up, and the first thing I would think about was a bag of dope, And I feel free. I feel free, and it's because of this program. So I picked, let me see. Well, you know what? I was going to read something, but since we have a new person here, maybe I should read something else. So, All right, I'll read this part right here. This is the doctor's opinion. It's at the bottom of XXVIII. And we do use the Book of Alcoholics Anonymous for this meeting. So, but if I was to think drugs, it's pretty much all the same thing.
Yeah, I've worked out of both books before.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. So men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the truth from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontent. Unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks, drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through a well-known stages of spree, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over unless this person can experience an entire psychic change. There is very little hope for his recovery or her recovery. So I like what it talks about injurious because that's like hurting myself, and I definitely couldn't tell the difference between the true and the false. And I really, really thought that I was supposed to be a heroin addict. Like at a certain point in my life, I thought these were the cards I was dealt, and this is it, and I really didn't have no choice, but I do have a choice. And the psychic change makes it sound so like, oh my God, do I have to go through this like big like spiritual awakening or something like that? And no, I think when I'm just honest with myself and really take a really like honest look at my addiction, it really helps me to take a different perspective on where I am and what I want to do with myself, and that's all I have right now. So thank you.